Welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette, featuring sysadmin expert Don Pizzette, security specialist Daniel Lowry, and Peter.
Hello and welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, and I am joined by Don Pizzette, who is, I think, having one of the worst weeks.
Me?
Well,
no,
yeah,
I'm having a great week.
You're migrating data. You got people calling.
Yeah, we are in the midst of a Microsoft 365 migration, which if you've ever had the opportunity to try and move one Microsoft 365 tenant into another Microsoft 365 tenant, you would know that Microsoft provides a plethora of tools that absolutely do not do that. Like, they just do not provide any support for that. So it's a bit of an undertaking, and it's been an adventure. It's been a lot of fun.
Would it have been easier to move everything to like Google Docs and then move back?
Oddly enough, yes. Yes, it would have been easier to do that.
Yeah, so I was thinking the other day, I was like, they just don't make it easy to move from itself to itself.
Yeah, which it should just be a phone call and, hey, Microsoft, can you merge these two tenants?
Flip the switch. No.
It'd be nice if they could just say, this is the new name of your tenant.
That would be even easier.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that'd be, yeah.
You didn't have to move anything.
How are you doing today, Daniel?
I'm laughing at Don and his plights. Sure. Because he got to laugh. I was trying to get some AWS stuff to work earlier, and he's like, that's an interesting problem you've got there. Anyway, moving
Good
on.
luck. Yeah.
I've been up since 3 a.m., so you can deal with this. And we are joined today by our special guest. We have Maxime Lamothe-Brassard, who is the CEO at LimaCharlie. How are you doing today?
Really good, really good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And I believe I said it in the correct original French.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah, close enough.
Well, we're going to go with it. All right. Well, you have a very cool backstory that we're going to talk about a little bit in origin stories, because you've worked at some really cool places. But first, let's go ahead and get to know you in our first segment, Rapid Fire Questions.
Who do you work for?
What's new?
Who are you?
What's happening?
What's wrong with you?
All right, Maxim, what we're going to do in this segment is rapidly fire questions at you. A timer will appear on the right side of your screen. You'll have approximately 1 minute to answer each question. If you take too long, Peter will buzz you. Like that, and we'll move on to the next question. We're going to rotate between each of us as we ask. Actually, we're going to rotate while we ask the questions to get caught up in our cables. First question is coming at you from Peter.
That's why we need those wireless earsets you were talking about off the air. All right, so for starters, can you give us kind of just the overview, the elevator pitch for LimaCharlie? What is it you guys do there?
Sure. So we do security infrastructure in the cloud. So we're kind of doing away with the whole, big ecosystem of having to talk to vendors, go through a bunch of salespeople in long-term contracts. So we're kind of taking the AWS approach of just spinning up infrastructure. And so that means things like, anything that's visibility. So EDR, the ability to take external logs. So we have our own EDR with a really wide platform support. You can bring all of the telemetry into the cloud, get 1 year of retention. And with that, you can, go at any point in time. You can run rules on the data coming in so that, you can alert on what you need. And then you can send the data out to other systems. So you can kind of optimize a bit your usage of maybe other products with that.
All right, so with that description, it sounds a lot like a SIEM, where we're taking data out of one system, correlating it in another, reporting back. But I know on your website you say you've got a fundamentally different way of handling cybersecurity. So what is it that sets apart what LimaCharlie does?
For sure. So the first one is the sales part of things, right? So it's self-serve, again, really like AWS. So that means you don't, your month to month, you decide your quota, no maximum, no minimum. You can just go and get access to the tools you need. The second thing is we're not building a boxed product, right? Like I would love for my grandma to be able to stop the Russians, but I don't think it's going to happen. Really what it is we're building tools for cybersecurity professionals. So we call them primitives. It's sort of the fundamental version of the tool so that you can bring it into your organization and integrate it into everything else. You don't have to sort of rely on the promise that somehow we have the right secret sauce to protect you against everything at once.
Well, that's actually really interesting. First off, I want you to not underestimate your grandmother. The lady is a saint and a hero.
Yeah, we're going to get letters.
So,
grandmothers everywhere.
Grandma here. Number two, I am very interested in your your billing model that you're using, right? This usage-based idea. What led you to that idea? Well, tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, I mean, really what it is that we realized that a lot of people, we don't have all the answers. We're really good at building the infrastructure, the security tools, but we're not threat intel people. We're not an MSSP. We're not a SOC. So we realized really quickly, hey, we want to work with people. And what that means is we even want to work with people that want to build security products. And, we really strongly believe that at this point in cybersecurity, you shouldn't have to go and build a whole EDR, build a whole agent, spend like the year and a half of the development to go and do that, to then do something with a different kind of value that you're bringing in, right? Maybe you're doing like machine learning on DNS. You should be able to reuse infrastructure like AWS, right? If you're in IT. So it's the same thing for us. So you can come in, be in pure usage. So you pay per event transiting the network. So all of a sudden you can have your cybersecurity company go to market really, really fast and just focus on the bits that you're giving value, not the mechanics of like how you get to it.
All right, so we've determined it's not for grandmothers, and again, don't at me, message him. But is this targeted at a certain, type of company, certain size of company, different industries? Are there people that are going to get more out of this than others?
Yeah, so generally speaking, we kind of talk about security professionals. That's really who we're targeting, meaning, if you're a dentist's office, like we're not the thing for you. If you don't have any security team at all, we're probably not the thing for you. Honestly, we don't BS. You're going to have better return by going to an MSSP and things like that. So that's kind of, MSSPs, people that do security for a living, MSPs, or enterprise where you do have a security team that are good at what they do, and they just want the tool to be able to go and do their job easily, not necessarily just kind of, I've heard a couple of times, like, what's the box that I need to buy, put on my network, and then I'm safe. That's not really the customers for us.
Does that actually exist?
Yeah. A lot of companies probably tell you it does.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. So you've worked, and we're going to get into this a little bit more in origin stories, but you've worked at the CSE, which is basically, for our American audience, the equivalent of the NSA in Canada. You worked at Google X, which is kind of like the secret behind the scenes thing. Who has cooler toys between those two?
It's different, definitely different sets of toys. I'll put it that way. Google does not really do a whole lot of SIGINT, thankfully. So,
sure.
I think that the coolest cybersecurity tools are probably, in NSA and intelligence. But the coolest infrastructure is definitely Google. Nothing else like it anywhere on Earth. It's really amazing stuff.
Yeah, they don't have like the ping pong tables.
Just a
at
couple
CSE
of Raspis.
Well, aren't they the ones that had that like floating barge out in San Francisco? That's like this glass.
Google did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were never allowed to have people on it though, because the whole permitting mess, and they ended up having to scrap it. Yeah, it was all wasted.
Really?
Yeah.
But did they have people there? Tell us honestly.
I had never heard that part of the story, so that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, why didn't I get to be in there? That's why. All right, well, let's go ahead and, as I've mentioned a couple of times, let's talk about where you got started in this week's origin story.
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound.
This is a pretty hardcore origin story.
All right, so where do we start? Did it start in college? Did it start before that, your love of computers, and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I always had computers when I grew up. I'm kind of like in that sweet spot where I had a Mac 2 SE when I was a kid. So the computer was always there. I think like most people that get into security, I thought from the outside that security looked really cool. But at the time, at least, it was still something pretty hard to get into. So I went to university, computer science, did my work term, which is like an internship at CSE. And at the time, I started there by building Java-based parking management web apps. So it's about as fascinating as it sounds. So it was interesting. And so, being in that organization, but kind of seeing like the cool kids doing the really interesting stuff on the side. So I petitioned a bunch of time internally to try to get another work term, got it eventually. And yeah, it was sort of a whole world opening, right? It's, I think for anybody that kind of gets into cybersecurity from the fundamentals of like, hey, what's going on in a computer, and just trying to do things. The stack, like there's just so many interesting things in cybersecurity that we can get into, and so I ended up spending like a whole semester just going all into like a specific piece of software, and thankfully the internship was one of those that kind of came in right from the get-go and said, your project is like this piece of software. We don't have any more guidance than that. You just go and figure out everything you have to, that you want about it. And the second thing was, whatever you do here, we will not use it. So it kind of just took off all the pressure. And I was in the middle of an Ottawa winter. So winter in Canada, where it's like, it's dark, like from 3 p.m. to like 9 a.m. So it's pretty much dark all the time. Just ended up spending, hundreds of hours just learning everything, in Ollie debug at the time, and kind of, reversing software, networking, and all that stuff. So, that was really kind of the explosion for me, and ended up getting recruited out of university. So joined them, and spent 7 years in, it was a really, really, really cool organization, right?
But at that point, they started using the things that you built?
Yes.
When they're paying you? Okay, good, because that's concerning.
There's a limit to the government cliche, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah. No, and yeah, that is just so cool. To have kind of the greenfield aspect in security is just so important. I think that's like, as cybersecurity is growing and becoming more mature, that's the thing we can't let go of. Is the passion behind it. And then everything else that happened after, was kind of from that. So joining CrowdStrike around employee 100 at the time, now looking back, it's like, oh, wow, that was a special point in time kind of thing. And then Google, I was in internal security for a while at Google. So again, like super interesting. Started actually LimaCharlie back then, as an open source project. Starting an open source project is a really, it's a really cool thing to try. It's also, I think, equally demanding as starting a company. You have to just promote it, and there's so much that you learn by going through that. So that was a pretty formative thing for me. And then Google X, which is a whole different thing, right? So the Google X is this idea of, we're going to take, part of Google, put them aside into it is kind of a startup, but a lot of funding, and try to do a moonshot. So, early Chronicle Security, which, that's what got spun off from that, of just having, again, a green field of, hey, we're Google. What can we do to really change things in cybersecurity, right? Like, what can we do that's the moonshot that, we don't know if we're going to get there, but if we are, it's going to have a huge impact.
So with LimaCharlie kind of going in the background at that point, what was the point where you said, hey, this is a job now. This is not, just a fun project, but we've got to go ahead and support this?
Yeah, I think, I got the itch when, as part of Google X, this idea of a moonshot, this idea of doing something really big. And my entire career has been kind of always been at the edge of the envelope of wherever I was, right? Trying to build new things that hadn't been done before. So having LimaCharlie, which was purely an EDR at the time in open source, in my back pocket, and kind of going like, okay, now's the time in my career, if I want to do this and I want to have a big impact, now's the time to try something wildly different. So that was really kind of the root of it.
So I'm curious, LimaCharlie, it started out open source, and now you've turned it into a commercial product or project. So like, what's that process like? Because How does that work? Do you just stick a flag in and say, all right, as of this point, you can fork everything that I've done up to this point, but now future changes are closed off? Or what's that like?
The mechanics of it is essentially that. Yeah, it's actually pretty simple from that perspective, right? I would say it's the interesting bit is not the mechanic as much as the philosophical part of it, right? When you've built something in open source, part of your heart is in that open source thing, and you don't want to just close source it and just go full capitalist on it, right? And just try to squeeze every amount of money from people. So that was a pretty tough decision for us to go and do that. But we kind of realized that what we could build with the philosophical backing of open source, meaning, we try to be as open source as we can. So all open APIs, like really, really open. But having to also support people that were trying to, deploy an EDR in a totally different environment, totally different ways. It was just too demanding for an early company. So that's kind of why we did that.
I'm going to start using that. We're going full capitalism. Going hardcore capitalism. So speaking of which, if people do want to find out more information, what's the website that they can go to?
LimaCharlie.io.
.io, perfect. And then you were telling me that you guys are launching something new with Office 365. What's that all about? Yeah. So we've been launching recently, and the next one that's happening very soon, hopefully this week or the next, is we're adding more and more data sources into LimaCharlie, right? So the idea is now you can have, Mac, Windows, Linux EDRs, you can have browsers, you can have, network pipes, soon we'll have mobile, then you can have Office 365 audit logs, instead of having to maybe upgrade your license to some crazy expensive Office license. You can just get like 1 year of retention and be able to search it and run rules on it through LimaCharlie. So that's going to be really cool. It just keeps opening up that aperture, and we kind of keep eating away at at the bits of infrastructure people need to have that really shouldn't be there anymore, right? Like Windows event log forwarding. We just integrate it all. And you've got a webinar coming up, correct?
That's right. On February 14, we've got a joint webinar with Soteria. They're an MSSP that's been using LimaCharlie for a long time. And so, it should be a really interesting discussion, LimaCharlie and then how they're making use of it. They're really kind of at the cutting edge of the whole concept around, DevOps around cybersecurity, right? Like how do we move the goalpost further to have like reliable, knowledgeable cybersecurity postures?
Well, luckily, I have nothing to do on February 14th.
Again.
So I guess I'll be there.
Calendar is empty.
It's the first person to ask me to do something on February 14th this year, so that's what we'll have to do. Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. Canadian chocolate. Is there maple syrup in that?
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
It
that
comes with a cup of maple syrup, so you can dip it.
Ooh, that'd be good. Chocolate and maple syrup. All right. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time today out of your schedule. And, it sounds like you guys have a lot going on. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and talk about it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, everybody. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and look at the news from this week. That's all coming up on Technado with Don Pizzette. Stay tuned.
I've been in the career education business since 2000.
I wanted to get into computers, and I'd kind of been doing it as a hobby for a few years at that point.
But what we found when we were running the career school was about 1 out of every 100 people that we talked to might enroll.
You had books and you had official courses, but if you had a question, you had nobody you could go to. Nobody.
But what could we do for the other 99? There's 99 people out of 100 who can't afford it.
Once I was A+ certified, it was easy to find jobs. There were lots of jobs that had that as a requirement.
One day I came to Don and I said, I've got an idea. What if we could remove the obstacles for people?
We said, how do we create a product that is valuable to people?
Reduce cost and make it fun.
I want to make resources available to people that they can learn about IT.
Having an option that you can attend anytime.
Learn about certifications, get certified.
On demand.
And get into the job they want.
Where every day there is new content being produced.
When something new comes out, we record that content.
It's the best of the classroom experience delivered conveniently online. a library of IT knowledge that's waiting for you.
Hello, thank you for watching IT Pro TV, helping you learn everywhere you go.
We started IT Pro TV to create the training that we wanted, that we wish that we would have had. The style and approach that we felt would truly help people learn IT and succeed.
That's what I want to do. I want to make life easier for people who want an IT career.
All right, welcome back to Technado with Don Bazette. A lot of news to get to this week. Some hardware stuff, as always. A little bit of security, a little nation state hacking.
Deep state.
That never happens.
Okay. You're the security guy, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
All right, our first article.
Safe out there.
Oh, super safe because of people like you.
Yep.
Our first article comes to us from ArsTechnica.com. New Starlink Premium costs $500 a month and ships sooner than standard Starlink. Well, it better for that much.
Yeah.
This can't be designed for like the home user, can it?
No, so this one's targeted at businesses.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you can get it at home if you want. They just call it the premium line, but it's really focused more towards businesses. Starlink was in beta last year. Very few people could actually get it, and now they've been opening up and letting more people get in. If you go to sign up right now, you have to pay a deposit, and it takes months to get your antenna, so it's not a very fast type thing. But they now have Starlink Premium where you can jump to the front of the line, really, and get in there. But it's a lot more expensive. So it's $500 a month, which is pretty high. I pay $100 a month right now for gigabit fiber, so that's considerably better than Starlink. But if you live somewhere that doesn't have fiber, then Starlink is better than the old DirecTV stuff.
Yeah.
But the hardware for this costs $2,500 as well.
Yeah,
that's
it's
in addition.
It's a different dish than the normal Starlink uses, so you've got to pay a little extra. But again, if you've got a small office or a home office,
for people that want to take social distancing to the next level, right? I'm gonna open my business up in the middle of Montana,
Off grid,
and I got 500 gig up and down.
as long as you can see the
Way to
sky.
fly. Yeah.
well, it gets you about. They say it can range between. I believe it was around 300 megabit. Oh no, it was says advertised download speeds of 100 to 200 megabits. But Greg, a gentleman here in our office, he has the regular Starlink dish, and he said he gets 300, 350 sometimes.
Wow.
But it's not a guarantee. With Starlink Premium, you're supposed to be like prioritized, so you get a little more bandwidth.
And this says strong performance in extreme weather. So is that the different
Probably because
antenna?
of the bigger dish.
Yeah. Either you guys or any of our listeners, if you've used Sirius XM, right? When it gets really cold, the antenna doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
And especially if there's any like ice on your car or whatever, like your signal just goes out.
Well, this could be the same. We didn't cover this story, but it was a few weeks ago. I put it in our
Cats.
chat. Yeah. Cats were sitting on the dishes because the dish has a little heater built in, so it melts the snow and ice away to make it work, but that also attracts
I just started a little
animals.
fire under my Starlink antenna. It keeps it warm.
Smart. Yeah, I bet like in some climates you've got, like cold-blooded like snakes and stuff will just get up
Yeah.
there.
They like it warm.
Yeah, and
That's how that works.
Yeah.
so you get dinner and internet.
But yeah, so it's really neat because we have a coworker who's been on the podcast a few times, Ronnie, where Ronnie lives in the boonies and does not qualify for DSL or cable
Yeah,
or
he runs a cable from the office.
anything. Yeah, he is on I think HughesNet. Is that what it's
most
called?
likely,
Satellite.
yeah.
And he's got a data cap. He gets like 2 gigs a month or something ridiculously low.
It's very small.
If he were to stream one movie, he'd run through his data cap,
Yeah.
and it totally stinks.
I think he downloads movies here and then takes them home.
Don has to give him Netflix on VHS, and he takes it.
He's like, don't get rid of that mail
He's the one
subscription.
guy.
Yeah, he's the holdout.
So if you're one of those people that's suffering like Ronnie, slowly dying on the inside, Starlink's gone mainstream now, so definitely time to check it out.
And thank you for wasting your data cap on us streaming this.
Hopefully you're doing the audio only.
Yeah, that seems like a horrible use of your
They hack their neighbors.
data. Yeah, you better be on that. Yeah, the whole community is
I
sharing
don't
one
watch
satellite dish.
Technado on my own data cap. Jeez,
No.
am I sick?
Not made of mine. All right. Our next article comes to us from xda-developers.com. Windows Terminal 1.13 comes with a new look for settings and auto-elevated profiles. So I assume you don't care about the new look, Don.
Yeah, that's stupid. Who cares?
So the auto-elevated profiles, is this kind of what we talked about last week of elevating security profiles for certain users, or this is something completely different?
This is different. So with what we talked about last week was a CVE, like it was an unintentional elevation of privileges. What we're talking about this week is on purpose.
Oh no, I meant the one where it would prioritize certain users in your network for
that was the
security.
Office 360 or Microsoft
The enhanced
365
security.
stuff, yeah.
Okay, so that's,
that's totally
still different. Still different.
Still different. Yep.
Yes.
In this case, it's a command prompt, right? And in Windows, when you launch a command prompt, it runs with the same user privileges as you, the user, because, well, you're the one who launched it, and that's the way programs work. But if you're an administrator and you want to perform some administrative task, in the past, you used to right-click on the command prompt and choose Run as Administrator. Kind of like the sudo command in Unix or Linux, but here it's in Windows.
But worse.
But worse. And then it would launch a terminal that was now with elevated privileges, so you could do your administrator-type stuff. Well, in Windows Terminal, you've not been able to do that. You could launch the entire Windows Terminal as an administrator, but that led to some various problems and issues, so you wouldn't normally want to do that, because then everything you do in it is as an administrator. Well, there were workarounds where you could install like the open source gsudo utility so that you could get elevated privileges on a single terminal, but now they're baking that into Windows Terminal 1.13. So that's a really exciting thing. You'll be able to have a regular command prompt and an elevated command prompt, a regular PowerShell and an elevated PowerShell, all open in the same Windows Terminal frame. So really cool stuff to be able to make life a little easier for admins.
The heavens have opened. I mean, welcome to technology that's been around since 1960 something, 70 something.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's about time Windows caught up to this game.
You know, you have to remember that the Windows Terminal is still fairly new, right?
Yeah.
It just went
but
1.0.
I mean, even command prompts, like since Windows inception, we've never had an easy way to elevate
that's true.
to an administrative prompt. You have to go through this foolishness of right-clicking to run as administrator.
You know,
I think you can run like, isn't there like after you have a terminal open, I think from like a command prompt, you can issue a command that will launch an elevated terminal.
Oh, you using the GOAT command or whatever, you can trigger it.
Yeah.
There's
it's convoluted.
There's little things like, do you remember way back there used to be the del tree command where you could delete a tree of subfolders, right?
Yeah.
And then they got rid of that and they never replaced it, right?
Yeah.
In Linux, we've got rm-r. You can remove nested folders to your heart's content, right? But you can't do that in a Microsoft command prompt. Then
why not?
Why not? Yeah.
Right. These are little things that just make me go, what's going on, Microsoft?
Yeah. Apparently they've deprioritized that.
How are they happy with that? Like, if I'm a developer or whatever, or somebody that runs Windows systems constantly day and night, and I'm over there, I'm like, oh shit, I gotta sneak and run a right click. You
got to go to the GUI, right?
God forbid you accidentally kill that screen and you can reopen it.
So is this something that I assume you can do in Linux much more easily?
You type in sudo,
absolutely,
and then it does everything as an administrator.
Yeah,
should do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe when we get the Microsoft version of Linux.
Yeah. That's what WSL was created for, right?
Exciting stuff.
Which did make Microsoft products a little more attractive to me. Because I can just, I don't have to worry about it not being there anymore. I got a WSL. I'm good. I do all the stuff I need to do.
That is true.
All right. This is one of those where I just had to wait to see that you guys are done with the conversation because I don't understand it. So, nailed it. All right. This next one comes to us from pbs.org.
And PBS is in the public broadcasting?
Yeah, and we're going to do a pledge drive here on the air, so please.
This article is actually brought to you by the letter K and people like you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Carnegie Mellon.
Can you take it? All right. Homeland Security creates new cyber safety board to review hacks. And when I first read this headline, I was thinking, like, so what are the reviews? Like, 1 star, do not recommend, do not install.
This hack was not as good as I thought it was going to be.
but different kind of review, right?
Well, yeah, different kind of review, but I would say that your version is just as effective as this version. So they're putting together this new board. So it'll be a group of people. Many of them are from the tech industry that are civilian leaders, not just like military officials. And they're going to be reviewing the various cyber attacks that happen here in the United States and then determining what we could do about it, right? Really writing a report. Well, the key thing here about this to remember or just to pay attention to is the fact that they're not like finding new stuff. They're looking at stuff that happened in the past. In fact, their first mission is attached to this Log4j vulnerability that's been kind of a huge wildfire the last month or so. That's That's something that kind of already happens, though, right? A big exploit like Log4j hits a ton of companies. We learn about it, patches come out, we review it, and hopefully we follow better patching practices, right? There's not really a different behavior we could have had that would have prevented that.
That was an O-Day. I mean, somebody discovered, hey, there's a real bad problem here. I could exploit that for fun and profit. Yay. And that's what they did until...
So this group will spend 6 months studying Log4j and where things fell apart. And then they'll release their findings, and then their findings will largely say, do your updates. Don't expose logging systems to the internet, and maybe
or anything at all.
Somebody should drop a little funding over to the people who support Log4j, something like that. Don't expect a whole miracle out of this, but it's kind of a first step in building better security awareness and information sharing between the government and the U.S. citizenry.
I feel like it's a first step toward regulation.
It could be.
Right, because this is typically how these things start, where it's like, we got a real problem over here. What we should do is get the government involved because they are amazing at solving problems. And then some private sector that we like, not those private sector people we don't like, we'll get them involved and we'll create a committee, and then they'll start feeding off each other, just like we did with the Federal Reserve and things like that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It works every time.
There are people like Bruce Schneier, who is a big advocate for that. He thinks that the government should be regulating the hell out of all this. And so there's voices out there that are calling for it. Daniel, I kind of know where you stand. For me, I typically prefer less regulation, no regulation in many cases. So, we'll see where it goes. Today they're putting out reports. Tomorrow they could put out who knows what. Executive orders.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me get my pen out.
Don't you want to regulate Bitcoin, though?
I want to eliminate Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Have you? Again, we don't have an article on this or anything, but just
you got 2 minutes.
Yeah, you got the NFT scams that are going on.
That is some stupid stuff, man. I'm sorry.
The way that Korea is funding North Korea is funding their missile program with stolen cryptocurrencies, and it should just not be legal. It's crazy.
Well, this segment was brought to you by the Human Fund.
The Human Fund.
Yeah. Money for people. And listeners like you.
Yeah.
All right. And we're going to send everyone a tote bag. They send in money.
Let's binge watch. What was that show?
Masterpiece Theater? Or Nova?
No. What was that?
Downton Abbey.
It was a long time ago.
Doctor Who.
Sesame Street.
It's along the lines of Doctor Who, but it was like a comedy. It was like a sitcom that they had with British people. It was a British comedy.
Benny Hill.
No. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah. I mean, I'd always turn it off.
The clue is it was a British comedy.
On PBS.
On PBS. The one. The only. Now I got to look it up.
Yep, you do that.
Get to that. I'm going to look it up.
I'll read the next article.
I'm looking it up.
And you look that up.
This is happening.
All right. This next article comes to us from therecord.media. Microsoft to block internet macros by default in 5 Office applications. And I think this is a great thing because it's one of those things where, even I know macros are bad. But for some reason, they're still on by default, even though most people don't even use them.
So the first macro virus that affected Microsoft applications was released over 20 years ago, right? A long time ago. And in that time, security researchers have been just begging Microsoft, turn off macros by default, but they haven't done it. And they've implemented a trust center. They've implemented warnings on screen. They let you know a macro is about to run. But the reality is most end users are just not capable of interpreting those prompts and understanding the risk they're about to take. And as a result, macro viruses macro malware, just in general, is just as effective today as it was 20 years ago. So Microsoft is finally making that next step and saying, we're going to turn off macros by default.
You can still turn them on.
You can still turn them on.
I thought they did turn them off a while ago. In the Office suite,
they give you the warning.
I thought it was straight up off.
But you're saying in
default
the
for a while.
In the desktop apps, not in the
in the desktop apps.
In
correct.
365.
Because I remember, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 years ago. They were like, we're taking that away. We're no longer turning that off by default. Now you can run macros to your heart content, and then lo and behold, macro viruses went on the rise.
Well, so So
I was
what
going to say it
happens?
took the Homeland Security Board 20 years to make
That's
this recommendation.
That's true.
So what happens right now if you open up a document with a macro,
get a warning.
you get a warning, and it says some active content has been disabled. Click for more details, and there's a big enable content button right beside it, right? What this change is doing is changing it so it'll say Microsoft has blocked macros from running because the source of this file is untrusted, and there's a learn more button. So it doesn't even give you an enable button. So
it's just another step before you can find that enable button.
yeah, well, I think
Cool. I mean, because they're not taking macros away, right?
Right.
They're just turning them off and making it a little more.
You
like
will have to
click-through.
flag the file as trusted, which is actually kind of a pain in the butt.
Gotcha.
So, it is an extra level. And then administrators can use GPOs to turn this feature off if they want, or, flip it back on. So it can be modified, but
Yeah.
it really is making that next step. And I'll say that when it comes to macros, especially Visual Basic macros, I don't really use them ever, but maybe if I was a CPA or something, that'd be more important to me.
Because they're all like Excel spreadsheets love macros, right?
Yeah.
Damn, Excel people. They are crazy with the macros. I can't think of. Do you use macros at all?
No.
No.
It took me I thought that was just a virus maker at first. And then I was like, oh, it's like so you can do like repeated tests. I mean, I'm sure like it's more like power users, I would think, and someone that works in Outlook all the time and wants to generate those things. And that's why it makes total sense that why wouldn't, you just have them click an extra button to say, yeah, run macros.
Yeah.
Good news is you can still slap malware inside of PDFs and whatnot. So
Thank God.
Or
Thank God.
embed it in a graphic file that's part of the document
There you
anyway.
go.
And
Super
Yes.
fun.
Each week we find a new way.
Yeah.
And we might find yet another way in our next segment,
A Huawei.
which is, Who Got Pwned?
Looks like you're about to get pwned.
Fatality.
Yeah!
All right, this story comes to us from Wired.com. North Korea hacked him, so he took down its internet. And we're talking vigilante justice here, which is normally not something we recommend, but this one sounds fun. Don, can you give us a little overview? What happened?
So, last year we reported on an article, I don't know if you guys remember, it was a while ago, about how North Korean hackers were targeting security professionals here in the United States. And what they were trying to do was compromise these security researchers to be able to gain access to their tools, their advanced tools. And some of them had unreleased vulnerabilities they were working on, that haven't gone through full responsible disclosure yet. And so the North Korean hackers were trying to gain access to that.
Poking the bear.
Well, they got caught because the security professionals tend to be better at noticing things like that. And so there were several that had reported on it. We covered it. But one in particular got a little frustrated that the U.S. government didn't seem to be doing anything about it. I know I've said that on the podcast before. It's really frustrating when it seems like our government isn't doing anything. And so he took matters into his own hands. He looked at North Korea and said, what can I do to mess with this? And he found out he could actually do quite a bit. He was able to have used numerous vulnerabilities in some of the edge routers in North Korea, as well as some of their other things like their national flight booking system, Air Koryo, that he was able to go in and basically take these sites down or do denial of services, block network access. And he's been causing network outages in North Korea for months. Like, this has been going on for a while. At one point, bringing the entire country's internet service down as, I guess, kind of like a protest retaliation. It's interesting to see that one person could do that.
So how is this set up, though? Because they're not on my internet, right? They're on their own complete, like, is it's shut off, but obviously there's some access points in.
There is some access, yeah. So if you are in North Korea, so very, very much like China, you have access to the full internet, but you're going through China's firewall or you're going through North Korea's. And so they can filter and track everything that you're doing.
And they can block sites and
Yeah, and then the government themselves, they have full access out to the internet,
Sure.
and they have various services and websites and things like the DPRK website is hosted in North Korea, but we can get to it right here from our own computers. So there are holes that are open up, and that's what this guy's been taking advantage of.
Yeah, as long as he's not, taking them down, we can access those sites.
yeah. If he lets us.
As your grandmother tells you, right? Speaking of grandmas today, the best way to stand up to a bully is to punch him right in the nose.
Well, in this case, what he's doing is arguably illegal.
I would say it's absolutely illegal, right? There's laws against doing it.
So
There's just not enforceable
It's tough on the international scene, because you have the whole thing about whether countries recognize other countries' governments and stuff. So there could be an argument that he's not actually attacking a country at all. Like there's things of that nature, but really, in general, you should not be doing these things, and there will likely be retaliation back against him. When they figure out who he is. If he's going public with this information, I can't imagine that'll take too long.
Yeah, this doesn't say who it is, right? He's under a pseudonym kind of thing here?
Pseudonym, is it P4X or PAX?
Yeah.
Or P-Forks?
P-Forks.
That's it.
Yeah.
P-Fork.
Yeah.
Unless you hear it out loud, it'd be hard to determine which one of those are correct.
So, yeah, I mean, this sounds fun. So it doesn't specifically say how he's doing this.
Well, they did detail a couple of different things that he's done. So not detailing like this is the exploit he used to get in here or get in there.
Not tips on
He did show like videos of him actually doing these things, though, right? I think the article was talking about that, where he had proof that he was doing what he said he was doing by showing.
Oh yeah,
how he was taking it down from his living room, watching aliens and eating corn snacks.
Yeah. He's actually doing it, and the interesting part is like let's say that you were on North Korea's cybersecurity team, right? Because they do have a fairly well built out cybersecurity team that they see these outages happening, and they might think, wow, the U.S. government, the United States is attacking us. But it turns out it's just one guy with some extra time on his hands. Yeah. It makes you wonder about the attacks on us, where it's very fast for people to say Russian hackers, Chinese hackers, and so on. Maybe it's just people eating Cheetos on the couch, and who knows?
Well, I guess now the more I think about it, legal issues aside, this does kind of suck in the sense that, life in North Korea doesn't sound great.
No.
You're hungry. You
Depends on who
don't
you
have
are.
access to information. Yeah, for the common folk there, and now you can't get to North Korean Netflix too. You can't book your airline.
I don't want to assume too much, but I'm going to assume if you're one of the impoverished, starving citizens of North Korea, you probably don't have access to the internet anyway.
Yeah, I think they have to
point.
shut electricity off to large portions of North Korea
that checks
certain
out.
days a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe not doing a lot of damage there, but
fair enough. Good point.
you are right. It is affecting a lot of innocents.
I heard that they were using power outages to discover dissidents.
Oh, because someone might have a generator,
no, you might have like DVDs that you bought on the black market that was illegal, and then they'll shut the power off in your house or to your whole village, and they'll come in and just start turning power onto your house, fire up the DVD player, and see if there was anything left in it.
Oh.
And you couldn't pull it out because they shut the power off. And now that's how they were catching them.
And that's where I keep the extra ham slices. Right there in the DVD player.
In a communist country,
I know.
You're allowed to have extra ham slices.
It is stories like that though that make you appreciate the freedoms that you have.
Do not take them for granted.
And I'd proudly stand up next to you and defend your still today. All right. We have some webinars coming up. There is one coming up today, this afternoon, Thursday, February 10th, Blueprint for a Successful Pen Test with our own Daniel Lowry and Ben Fink from On Defend. So check that out over at itpro.tv/webinars. The archive will be up there as well if you are listening to this at a later time. There's also another one coming up here for our hacking month, Starting Your Ethical Hacking Career, a Pen Tester's Guide. That's Thursday, February 24th. That is with Philip Wiley. Oh, yeah. And you as well, Daniel.
I will be there as well. He wrote the Pen Tester Blueprint. And
we're giving a copy of that away.
Who are we now?
We're giving a copy away.
Somebody.
To Daniel.
I'm gonna break into the industry one of these days.
to read before the before the webinar, so he knows what he's talking about. So
I've actually read it.
So. Oh, you have? Yeah. Okay. Well, now you get two.
I didn't say I bought it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That should be the test. Like, can you find an illegal copy of this book? Then you're ready. The student has become the master.
Yeah, that's it.
And while you're on the internet, head over to technado.com and check the site out. You've got an area to send us feedback. Let us know who you want to see on here as guests. Tell us what stories to cover, things like that. You can also click that big orange button in the corner that says sponsored by IT Pro TV and get 30% off the lifetime of your IT Pro TV personal membership. You can also request a team trial and see all the great features like the Pro Portal that are available to teams of 2 or more folks over at IT Pro TV. So definitely check that out. All right, I want to thank our guest today, Maxime Lamothe-Brassard. I rolled the R that time to make it even more official.
French don't normally roll their R's.
Yeah. Well, I was reading it as a Spanish person. But
they are both like derivatives of Latin, though, right?
Yeah.
It's a Romance
So is English. We don't roll our R's.
I do sometimes.
I thought English was more Germanic.
I believe you're right.
I believe that is right, yeah. But it's still based on Latin. Whatever. Not what this podcast is about.
Everything's based on Latin.
Etymology road.
Yeah. Welcome to our linguistics podcast. And I think we covered it today.
We're talking umlauts.
Yeah.
And what they can do for you.
Favorites. All right. Thank you guys. And we will see all of you next week right here on Technado with Don Pizzette.